The dragon sleeps, but the legend is awake forever. 1972. Millions of Americans tuned in to watch the hit TV show Kung Fu. It was a revolutionary concept, a Shaolin monk wandering the American Wild West, using martial arts to fight injustice. The star of the show was David Carradine, a white actor with no martial arts experience, moving slowly, awkwardly, pretending to be Chinese. Sitting in his small apartment in Los Angeles, Bruce Lee watched the screen in silence. He wasn't just watching a TV show, he was watching his own soul being sold for profit. Because Kung Fu wasn't David Carradine's idea, it wasn't the studio's idea, it was Bruce Lee's idea. How did this happen? How did the greatest martial artist in history get replaced by a man who didn't even know how to throw a kick? To understand this theft, we have to go back 1 year to the smoke-filled offices of Warner Bros. 1971. Bruce Lee was desperate. He had played Kato in The Green Hornet, but he was still just a sidekick, a chauffeur, a man behind a mask. He wanted to be the star. He wanted to show the West the true philosophy of the East. So he spent months writing a script. He poured his heart into it. He called it The Warrior. It was the story of a martial artist named Sam traveling through the Old West. It was brilliant. It was fresh. Bruce pitched it to the executives at Warner Bros. And Paramount. They loved the script. They loved the action. They loved the philosophy. But there was one problem. The executives looked at Bruce, handsome, charismatic, English-speaking, and shook their heads. An Asian leading man, they said? It won't work. The American audience isn't ready. Your accent is too thick. You're too exotic. They told him to wait. They told him the project was on hold. Bruce trusted them. He waited. He kept training. He kept dreaming. Then came the announcement. Warner Bros. Was producing a new show called Kung Fu. The plot? A Shaolin monk in the Wild West. The main character? Changed from Sam to Kwai Chang Caine. The star? Not Bruce Lee, but David Carradine, a white man who reportedly danced ballet instead of practicing Kung Fu. Bruce was crushed. When he confronted the studio, they denied everything. They claimed it was a totally different concept, but Bruce knew the truth. Hollywood didn't want him. They wanted his culture, his moves, and his ideas, but they didn't want his face. Imagine the frustration. You are the best in the world at what you do. You're faster than the camera. You have the charisma of a god. But a room full of men in suits tells you that you are unmarketable simply because of the shape of your eyes. Most men would have quit. Most men would have accepted the role of the eternal sidekick. But Bruce Lee wasn't most men. He turned off the TV. He packed his bags. He looked at his wife Linda and said, "If they won't make me a star here, I'll go somewhere else. I'll show them what they lost." He had $50 in his pocket. He had no job. He had a wife and 2 kids, but he had a fire burning in his gut that was about to burn Hollywood to the ground. The dragon was leaving America, not to run away, but to reload. He was heading to a tiny, chaotic island called Hong Kong. He thought he was leaving the sharks behind, but he had no idea that he was walking straight into the den of the tigers, the Triads. Hong Kong, 1971. It was a city of contrasts, skyscrapers rising next to slums, British colonial wealth clashing with desperate poverty, and ruling over the entertainment world was one giant monopoly, the Shaw Brothers. Bruce Lee arrived with a heavy heart. He was 30 years old. In Hollywood, he was a nobody. But in Hong Kong, thanks to reruns of The Green Hornet, he was a curiosity. People knew him as Kato. He needed money badly. He had to support his family back in America. So he walked into the office of Run Run Shaw, the king of Hong Kong cinema. Bruce expected respect. He expected a star's salary. But Run Run Shaw looked at this arrogant American-Chinese actor and offered him a slave contract. $2,000 per movie, a 7-year lock, no creative control. It was an insult. It was worse than Hollywood. Bruce stormed out of the office. He was trapped. He had burned his bridges in America, and now the biggest studio in Asia had rejected him. He was on the edge of failure. But then, the phone rang. On the other end was a man named Raymond Chow. Chow was a rebel. He had just left the Shaw Brothers to start his own tiny, underfunded studio called Golden Harvest. He didn't have money. He didn't have big sets, but he had vision. He told Bruce, "I can't pay you much up front, but I will give you respect. I will let you fight the way you want to fight." Bruce took the gamble. He signed a 2-movie deal for $15,000. It wasn't a fortune, but it was a chance. Production began immediately on a film called The Big Boss. But this wasn't Hollywood, it was hell. They filmed in a remote village in Thailand. The budget was non-existent. There were no trailers, no air conditioning. The heat was unbearable, over 100 degrees every day. The food was terrible. Bruce lost weight rapidly because he couldn't eat the local meat without getting sick. He survived on vitamins and canned beef he brought from home. And the action directors, they wanted him to jump on trampolines. They wanted him to wave swords like an opera singer. Bruce refused. He argued on set every day. "No wires," he screamed. "Real fighting, emotion, anger." He took over the choreography. He forced the stuntmen to actually hit him. He turned a cheesy B-movie into a showcase of raw violence. When filming wrapped, Bruce returned to Hong Kong, exhausted and anxious. He told Linda, "I don't know if they will like it. It's too different." October 1971, the midnight premiere of The Big Boss in Hong Kong. Bruce Lee sat in the back of the theater hiding his face. He was terrified. The movie played. The audience watched the raw, brutal fights, the blood, the speed, the screams. When the credits rolled and the lights came on, there was absolute silence. Bruce's heart stopped. He thought he had failed again. He thought his career was over. He started to stand up to leave quickly, but then one person started clapping, then another, then 10, then the whole room. The silence exploded into a roar. People weren't just clapping, they were screaming. They were standing on their seats. They had never seen a Chinese hero fight like this before. He wasn't flying on wires, he was breaking bones. He was real. They hoisted Bruce onto their shoulders and carried him out of the theater like a king. In one night, literally one single night, Bruce Lee went from a rejected Hollywood extra to the biggest star in Asia. But as the flashbulbs blinded him and the crowd chanted his name, Bruce didn't see the dark shadows gathering at the edge of the red carpet. The Triads were watching. They saw the money, they saw the power, and they decided it was time to collect their share. The dragon had risen, but now he had to survive the predators. 1972. Bruce Lee was the most famous face in Asia. But in Hong Kong, fame attracts two things: fans and gangsters. The movie industry wasn't just entertainment, it was the playground of the Triads. For decades, these criminal organizations controlled the studios, the theaters, and the stars. If you wanted to film on the streets, you paid protection money. If you wanted your movie in theaters, you gave them a cut. Actors were often kidnapped or beaten if they refused roles. And here was Bruce Lee, an American, an outsider, an arrogant superstar who refused to bow down to anyone. He didn't pay protection money. He beat up the street thugs who tried to intimidate him on set. He was walking through a minefield, and he didn't care. But the real danger wasn't on the streets. It was right inside the studio. His name was Lo Wei. Lo Wei was the director of The Big Boss and Fist of Fury. He was a powerful man with deep connections to the underworld. He hated Bruce Lee. He hated that Bruce changed his scripts. He hated that Bruce took credit for the fight scenes. He hated that the press called Bruce the Dragon and ignored the director. Their relationship turned into a war zone. On the set of Fist of Fury, they screamed at each other daily. Bruce called Lo Wei incompetent. Lo Wei called Bruce a prima donna. But Lo Wei had friends. Dangerous friends. The tension finally exploded in a dressing room at Golden Harvest Studios. According to witnesses, Lo Wei had been spreading rumors that he controlled Bruce Lee, that he taught the kid everything he knew. Bruce heard the rumors, and he snapped. He stormed into the studio. He cornered Lo Wei. It is said that Bruce was wearing a special belt that day, a belt with a hidden knife in the buckle. He didn't pull it out, but he made it very clear. He pointed a finger at the director's face and whispered, "You can't control me. If you keep talking, I will erase you." Lo Wei was terrified. He ran to the police. He ran to the press. He claimed Bruce Lee threatened to kill him. Suddenly, Bruce wasn't just a star, he was a madman. The press turned on him. The police opened a file on him. And then, the threats started. Anonymous phone calls, notes left on his windshield. "Watch your back, the dragon can bleed too." Bruce became paranoid. He started carrying a gun. He hired bodyguards. He stopped trusting people. The stress was eating him alive. He was breaking box office records by day, but by night he was living in terror, waiting for the shadows to move. He needed an escape. He needed to get away from Lo Wei, away from the Triads, away from the toxicity of Hong Kong. He decided to write, direct, and produce his own movie, a movie where he was the boss. No Lo Wei, no gangsters. He called it The Way of the Dragon. He took his crew to Rome, Italy, as far away from Hong Kong as possible. But he didn't know that even in the Colosseum, fighting Chuck Norris, he couldn't outrun the stress that was slowly destroying his body. The Triads couldn't kill him with bullets, so they waited. They watched as the pressure did the work for them. Success has a funny way of changing people's memories. Suddenly, the executives at Warner Bros., the same men who said Bruce Lee was too Asian, the same men who stole his idea and gave it to David Carradine, remembered his phone number. They didn't call to apologize, they called to make a deal. They saw the box office numbers coming out of Hong Kong. The Big Boss, Fist of Fury, The Way of the Dragon. They were shattering records. Bruce Lee was generating millions of dollars, and Hollywood wasn't getting a cent. So they offered him the crown jewel, the first ever co-production between Hollywood and Hong Kong, a massive budget, global distribution. The movie was titled Enter the Dragon. For Bruce, this was the moment he had waited for his entire life. It was his ultimate revenge. He was going to prove to the West that he wasn't just a sidekick, he was the main event. He signed the deal, but he didn't realize that he was signing his death warrant. The production of Enter the Dragon was a nightmare. Bruce was under unimaginable pressure. He wasn't just the star, he was the fight choreographer, the script doctor, and the cultural ambassador. He was trying to bridge East and West, but both sides were fighting him. The American crew was racist. They didn't respect him. They called him Chinaman behind his back. The Chinese crew was jealous. They thought he had sold out to the Guailos, foreigners. And the Triads, they were still there, lurking in the shadows, creating problems on set, demanding money. Bruce stopped sleeping. He stopped eating. He lost massive amounts of weight. His body, once a fortress of muscle, began to look shredded but terrifyingly thin. He dropped to 60 kilograms, 130 pounds. To cope with the stress, to silence the voices in his head, he reportedly began chewing cannabis root. He needed something, anything, to slow down his hyperactive brain. And then, the warning shot came. May 10th, 1973, 2 months before the movie's release. Bruce was in a hot, airless dubbing studio at Golden Harvest. The air conditioning was turned off to record sound. The air was suffocating. Suddenly, Bruce felt dizzy. He excused himself to go to the bathroom. Minutes later, a studio employee found him on the floor. He was convulsing, foaming at the mouth. His eyes rolled back. He was dying. They rushed him to the hospital. Doctors found massive swelling in his brain, cerebral edema. They pumped him full of mannitol to reduce the pressure. Miraculously, he woke up. He survived. The doctors looked him in the eye and said, "Bruce, your body is telling you something. You have the body of an 18-year-old, but the stress of a 60-year-old. If you don't stop, next time you won't wake up." Bruce listened. He nodded, and then he did exactly what a tragic hero does. He went back to work. He had a movie to finish. He had a world to conquer. He told himself he was the dragon, and dragons don't rest. But the clock had started ticking. He had exactly 60 days left to live. July 20th, 1973, the hottest day of the year in Hong Kong. Bruce Lee spent the afternoon discussing scripts with his business partner, Raymond Chow, and actress Betty Ting Pei. They were at Betty's apartment in Kowloon Tong. Bruce was excited. He was scheduled to meet George Lazenby, the man who played James Bond, that very night for dinner. He had big plans. Around 7:30 p.m., Bruce complained of a headache, a sharp, pounding pain. The same pain he felt back in May. Betty Ting Pei did what anyone would do. She gave him a prescription painkiller she used for herself, a pill called Equagesic. It was a common drug, a mix of aspirin and a muscle relaxant. Bruce swallowed the pill with a glass of water. He told Raymond Chow to go ahead to the restaurant. He would join them later. Then he walked into the bedroom, laid down on the mattress, and closed his eyes. He never opened them again. When Bruce didn't show up for dinner, Raymond Chow returned to the apartment. He tried to wake Bruce. He shouted his name. He slapped his face. Nothing. The dragon was still. Panic set in. They called a doctor, then an ambulance. They rushed him to Queen Elizabeth Hospital. Doctors pumped his chest. They injected adrenaline straight into his heart, but it was too late. At 11:30 p.m., the king of Kung Fu was pronounced dead. He was 32 years old. But the tragedy didn't end there. The scandal was just beginning. Terrified of the press finding out that Bruce Lee, a married man with 2 children, had died in the bed of a beautiful actress, Raymond Chow and the studio made a fatal mistake. They lied. They released a statement saying Bruce Lee died at home in his garden, walking with his wife. But the press in Hong Kong was ruthless. Within 3 days, reporters tracked down the ambulance records. They found out he was picked up from Betty Ting Pei's apartment. The lie was exposed. And because they lied about where he died, the public assumed they were lying about how he died. The official autopsy stated death by misadventure, An allergic reaction to the Equagesic pill caused his brain to swell again. But nobody believed it. How could the fittest man on Earth be killed by a tiny headache pill? Rumors exploded. Did the Triads poison him for refusing to pay protection money? Did a rival master finally land the dim mock death touch? Did the family curse finally claim its first victim? Or was it simply the crushing weight of his own ambition, the stress of Hollywood, the racism, the pressure to be perfect that finally broke his body? Bruce Lee fought for recognition his entire life. He wanted to show the world the beauty of his culture. He wanted to be a star. He achieved everything he dreamed of. Enter the Dragon was released 6 days after his death. It became one of the most successful movies in history. He became the global icon he always wanted to be. But he never saw it. He never heard the applause. He paid the ultimate price for fame. Today, his statue stands in Hong Kong, looking out over the water. He is frozen in time, young, powerful, invincible. The man died, but the legend is bulletproof.